Do we need a minute or two more? No? Okay, well, we have quorum, so we're at 9, so I'm gonna call this meeting to order. We'll start with our traditional land acknowledgement, that we acknowledge and respect the indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. And we have our agenda before us. And is there any changes to the order or anything that needs to be added or removed? Seeing none, can I get a mover? Moved, seconded? Seconded?
Pete.
Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is passed. And that takes us to the procedure of minutes. Is there any changes, updates, or clarifications sought from the minutes? Okay, we've received those, and that, yeah,
Did you move?
we don't vote on
for those,
receiving
okay.
minutes,
Right.
unless we're changing them.
Okay.
Okay, seeing those are received, let's move on to the delegation. We have with us a delegation today from Nelson Minor Hockey, which is appealing an allocation. You guys are probably fine just right there if you want. But
do you want us to move? We can move
we
over there.
typically have people at the end. That's usually where the delegations sit. So if you could just give us your names and then you have the time to tell us your request and your appeal and give us your case and we'll hear it from you and then we'll have a conversation afterwards.
Yeah, I'm Phil Reese, President of Nelson Minor Hockey.
Yeah.
And I'm Kyle Mace, Vice President of Player Development with Nelson Minor Hockey.
Thanks for coming. Go right into it.
Okay, I guess our appeal is based off of the fact that we had 2.5 hours of ice taken from us on a Tuesday with the statement that they gave us more ice in the mornings, which is understandable. They did offer us that ice, but that ice isn't very usable for our youth groups. And then I don't know if we were accidentally included in an email or we were supposed to be included in it. There's an email sent from the ice scheduler at the RDCK literally stating she didn't follow the matrix, which is your guys' policy to follow it. And that's why we're appealing it. Simple as that. Like, our numbers are growing. We've grown the past 3 years. I think we're at 236 registrants last year. And we foresee that continually growing. And we need that ice. We can't give that ice up to a group that literally doesn't have a home base. They're not a minor hockey association. And in reality, we've asked for the information. We haven't been given it. How many of their players actually live in the RDCK? So that's why we're appealing.
Okay. And I guess what we'll do is we'll provide an opportunity for commission to ask any questions before I ask for delegates to take their seats again. Is there any questions from commission? Either in the room? Tom?
Yeah, hi guys. So 236 coming up, 200.
No, we'll be more than that this year. We're adding an entire team in an age group actually. So like U13s usually typically one team the last few years. Now we've got 2 in the house program, which is like, those are just kids in the community. This isn't a rep program. This is literally just kids in the community trying to play hockey.
I can just continue.
Yeah, continue.
So is that a trend that you've seen over X number of years or?
Yeah, since COVID, yeah, we've slowly been coming back in terms of numbers. And with the introduction of the intro programs, both the girl and female intro programs, which is open to kids also from Castlegar, to be honest, as well. Just getting kids on the ice. So doing kind of like the Ring Rats program that the RDCK runs, similar idea. It's just we do it with hockey and trying to get those kids on the ice and learn to have fun in a hockey game as opposed to being just in helmet and athletes. So yeah.
And I think our retention for that program, moving from that program to actual minor hockey, is about 70 to 75%, give or take.
So a real stepping stone.
Huge stepping stone.
Okay, sure. Sorry, I just wanted not to have to go through the chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's a stepping stone for minor hockey.
Yes, and it's a thing that Hockey Canada sort of pushed throughout right after COVID, and that's why we took it on. We actually started with the females only, and then we moved to the boys because there were so many boys that wanted to do this program they're just worried about stepping into hockey at 13 years old. They haven't played before, so it's a program to teach them the game, and then they step right into it, which is amazing. That's what we should be doing in our community, is pushing these youth into these kind of sports or just fun things to do, exercise, recreation.
Are you good, Tom? Okay. Cheryl, I see you. Go ahead.
So thank you and good morning, and thank you for all the good work you're doing with the hockey. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. So my question is really about your schedule and other facilities that you use. Like, do you have time in the Castlegar arena? Like, are there other arenas that you're using for this?
No, so we've actually helped out the Castlegar minor hockey because they're only having one sheet of ice. So we actually have taken on their Wildcats program once a week here in Nelson. And no, the only two facilities we have available to us are the Civic Center and the NDCC.
Supplemental, you good, Cheryl?
That's good. Thank you. I was just trying to understand if there was other facilities available. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kate?
Thanks so much. This might be a question for staff, but and I'm not sure who this is a question for. So in the policy, it states that prime time is identified by the user group, something like that. That's kind of the language around it. Can I get some clarity on what constitutes prime time for the groups, please?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going. No, so prime time is basically any time from about 3:30 onwards, Monday through Friday, and any time on weekends.
So what do you mean any time? Like, does it stop at a certain time? Is midnight still prime time? Like, when does it end? When does prime time
It's
end?
our operational hours, so it would go till the end of our operational day, which Craig's gonna correct me if I'm wrong. I wanna say it's 11:30 or can be pushed longer depending on like an operational need. Like we've had events that take the ice later in the day, like so beyond our typical operating hours.
Yeah.
But it's the whole operational day.
Okay, so just to say it back, a 10:30 time slot is the same as a 3:30 time slot in terms of prime timedness.
On a weekend,
On a
yes, yes, and on a weekday, sorry, I was.
No, it's okay.
So through the chair, anytime from 3:30 till the end of our operational day, weekdays.
Yeah.
And any time that we're operational on Saturdays and Sundays is prime time ice.
Okay, and so for clarity, does that mean so just helping me understand, because there's lots of words here. Each facility will have its own definition that is determined by staff and ratified by the operating authority. Prime time might vary by seasons. Typically, prime time is the period during which demand is most concentrated. So 10:30 p.m. is prime time and 3:30 p.m. is prime time equivalent.
Yeah, through the chair, that
Okay.
policy was written prior to regional standards being set.
Okay,
And so that would have said that each location could set their prime time, but it's, to Trish's point, 3:30 is when prime time starts and it ends Monday to Friday at the close of business.
okay. And is that region wide? So
It
all
is.
4 facilities that we
The chair it is, yes.
Okay. Can you help me also understand, there's a couple times in here where it says early morning. Can I understand what early morning means across the region, please?
Through the chair, we open at, ice could be ready at 6. So assuming 6 to start of school could be early morning.
At all 4 sheets of ice?
Through the chair, yeah.
Okay. 6 to start of school's at 8? What is that?
School, I think what I've seen, users will get off the ice at about 8:30, sorry. No, 8 o'clock
Yeah,
to get to school.
okay. And that's not prime time,
It is not prime time.
not prime time, okay.
Okay. Do you have any more questions for the delegation? We have a whole item on this.
Yeah.
To follow.
Sorry, was that, is that your understanding as well of prime time and early morning on your, because some of your email here reflects a curiosity around the administrative fairness of applying the policy. So was that your same understanding of prime time?
Yes.
And early morning, same?
Same, yeah.
And there seems to be some question around a change from last year. Can you help me understand any changes in prime time versus early morning from last year?
Yeah, so we had the ice available to us till 9:15 on Tuesdays from, I think we got it 3:30 till 4:30 last year. Then there was a break for an RDCK program, and then it came back to us until 9:15 every day in the NDCC. And this year it's now being stopped at 7 o'clock. So that's two practices that we're losing during that time.
And how about early morning? Is it the same as last year? Like your understanding of early morning hours?
Similar to last year, yeah.
Yeah, they said they would give it to us at 6 instead of 6:30, but for the teams that are losing, like, that's just not viable for the kids, because we have kids who are trying out for our rep teams from Caslow, from Nakas. And that was one of the things that they said that at a meeting that we were at, that the zone program can't go in the mornings because they have kids coming from all over.
Right.
So do we, and they're actually RDCK taxpayers, where the zone program, not all their players are.
I think that helps me so far. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, does that picked up any new questions, Tom?
With a lot of words, so is the crux of your concern the Tuesday evening,
Yes.
those 2 hours, 2.5 hours?
Mhm.
So that would be 2 hour 15 slots or
For
2
our
hour
rugby.
slots and then ice, re-ice it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys, for coming and giving us the opportunity to hear the concern and answer questions. You just take your seats off to the side again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for this time.
And we will move on to our next item, which is, the more formal discussion with staff about this particular item. We have before us a report on the appeal and the allocation policy. Craig, do you wanna? Craig or Trish, who wants to?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll kick it off, and appreciate, there's not really a flow to this. The report is submitted for the commission's, consideration. It's got two pieces. One is the appeal and the other is, requesting direction to look at the policy, because there's, upon review of this and after 4 years of applying the allocation policy and procedures, there are some situations occurring that are leading us to understand that the policy has some gaps. So we'll get into that. The policy is actually not as prescriptive as it could be, and not as clear as it could be. But the staff at the NDCC followed the timeline established in the procedures as far as the requesting 4-season data from the users, applying the request to a schedule, and then working through the conflicts at a meeting. And that's usually, in a nutshell, how the process goes. There are, from year to year, changes in organizations, including increases to numbers, increases to the makeup of those groups, where in Preston Minor Hockey, for example, they had a whole group of young kids, quite young, join one season, which caused a major disruption to that age group. But then in some situations, groups will change from season to season. That creates a bit of a challenge for us. The staff's job in allocation is to optimize the use for the benefit of the community according to the philosophy of the benefits-based approach. And that's described in fees and charges, and it's described in allocation. And so optimizing the ice includes, and in the policy, staff management being able to make decisions that optimize the ice that don't align with previous season schedules. So there's not an hour for hour comparison. There's not a schedule for schedule comparison. It's basically staff are applying the benefits, or applying the schedule to the benefit of the community. And that's what staff did in this situation. The first appeal that we heard from the Nelson Old Timers was essentially that they had been moved from their slot of 8:30-ish. They had from over the last 50 years, they've had a number of different times, but they had found a niche at 8:30 on Tuesday nights. Is it Monday night? Sorry. Tuesday nights we're talking about?
Monday.
Yes, Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday nights, sorry.
But
And so, they had appealed that and staff had sat with them, because in the conflict resolution procedure, they had appealed to the facility manager and then they had appealed to the general manager. So we had sat with them. And through that, we discovered that optimizing the ice, the early morning ice, the NDCC and the Civic hadn't been done at the complex. So what in the past, for the commission's information, when a contractor operated it, the contract was such that if we wanted to use the Civic Arena at 6 a.m., they would charge us more money because of the way the contract was drafted. And so that practice of not using the Civic for early morning has carried forward, even though staff are now through the commission operating the Civic Arena, no contract, so we have a budget for staffing. And we had never optimized the ice, never looked at optimizing the Civic as far as moving appropriate users into that, which would be youth in this situation. And so through the review of the old timers appeal, we discovered that we hadn't optimized the ice by putting minor hockey or figure skating club, other youth groups into that spot. So that's what we had chosen to do, noticing that there's 4 hours Tuesday through Friday at the Civic for early morning. We had said to minor hockey, this is how we're going to optimize the ice. And so we had made that decision to do it, which made that old timers appeal was heard, and then they were rescheduled.
Sorry, could I
yes.
just need to interrupt for 1 second. Are you talking about a previous appeal or this summer appeal of the old timers?
This year.
So they were 8:30 on Monday, and then with the new 6 a.m., they're like, wait a second, this isn't.
No,
Or
no,
appeal.
no, the old timers appeal is what caused us to move minor hockey to the early morning. Because old timers had been bumped to 9:30. They wanted 8:30.
Yeah.
So we had heard their appeal and we realized that we weren't optimizing the ice at the complex or the Civic to the benefit of all users and optimizing the ice. So we had moved minor hockey into recognizing there was a gap early mornings. And this is also standard in Castlegar. This is also standard in Creston, that the youth groups are, when we optimize ice, that's more appropriate for them to use it than adult groups, given that adult groups would then take the later time slots. So adult the time slots are after supper time ish. And so that's what we had done. And that's what had caused us to approve the old timers appeal, recognize that there was 4 hours that wasn't being used, at least 4 hours not being used at the Civic Arena by minor hockey.
Okay, see, a question from Cheryl, so
Go ahead.
Is it okay time to?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Thank you. So I guess I'm trying to understand the matrix. So I'm trying to understand, like, is this matrix, the scoring matrix, like, is it discretionary or is it required to be used by the bylaw? I guess that's my first question.
Yeah, through the policy, through allocation, when you have a conflict, so the way, when two groups ask for the same period of time on the same day, it creates a conflict in the schedule. So then through the policy, we established the benefits-based approach, eligibility. We had established a matrix of scoring, and it was weighted according to the criteria established in the policy. And so if you're a youth for-profit, not-for-profit group, you get a higher priority than an adult for-profit group, for example. And so when there's a conflict for the same period of time, the same exact ice slot, then we evaluate two groups in conflict, and we say, we go through the weighting and we say, this group has a higher priority because of the evaluation and the matrix, and that's why we're making this decision. And so that was one way that we would work through conflicts. But the piece that was missed here, is we did not optimize the ice to eliminate that conflict initially. So we could have optimized and got into the practice of saying to minor hockey, the Civic Arena is open before school. You should use that first, fill that up before you make requests for later on in the day. And this was just something that a past practice at the NDCC and the Civic, because of the contractor situation, had carried forward to this year, which is what we discovered.
That's making sense.
Okay, Cheryl, is that good for you for now? Kate?
Thanks. Can you just clarify the old timers appeal went from 8:30 Monday because they went from 8:30 Monday to 9:30 Tuesday?
No,
to 9:30.
sorry, they had been bumped, so backing up a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
The old timers actually last year during the allocation had discovered that through demand, and there's another piece that adds to the demand for minor hockey. The old timers had been bumped to 9:30, so through that allocation last year, they had been bumped to 9:30, and then minor hockey discovered last year that they didn't need all of that time. And so then we essentially reverted that back and gave the old timers their 8:30 time slot, because minor hockey had released that back to us.
Okay.
They said, we don't need that anymore on
Last
Monday night. So the old timers went back to 8:30 last year. So then this year, when minor hockey made the request, the piece that's missing is that in previous years, the regional team, the Crusaders, had been under the umbrella of minor hockey, which is permitted in the policy that a new group coming in, if they're the same type of group, youth not-for-profit, that minor hockey had allowed the Crusaders, a regional team, which is comprised of youth from Castlegar, Nelson, Trail, other parts of the Kootenays as a regional team. And so they had used the minor hockey's, Nelson Minor Hockey's ice as an umbrella. And then this year, Nelson Minor Hockey had decided Crusaders could no longer be part of their under their umbrella. And that was so essentially the Crusaders were then left to their own. And given that they were the original allocation from last year, that's where it looks like we're taking an hour away from minor hockey that they always had in the schedule before.
And it effectively, through the chair, becomes a new user group that's getting thrown into the mix.
Okay,
Through the chair, correct.
I'm not gonna allow questions from the gallery, but I'm seeing some aggressive head shaking on that. If minor hockey had a different perspective on that, what would it be?
Well, through the chair, that conversation with the Crusaders actually, a number of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the facility manager at the NDCC at the time, Ryan Rickleton, had asked about this regional team coming in and that they wanted to use the ice, and they were a not-for-profit youth group comprised of mostly local or some local and some non-local youth in a couple of age groups. And so through that conversation with the former general manager of community services, Joe Kirko, we had discussed that group being an umbrella because minor hockey had essentially sublet their ice to this group. And we weren't really fully aware of it. This is my recollection of the conversation. And so we allowed that to carry forward as the Crusaders using minor hockey as an umbrella group. And so inside of the schedule from last year, the Crusaders aren't mentioned because they're part of the block of ice that minor hockey is. This year, the Crusaders are mentioned separately because they're no longer part of the minor hockey umbrella.
And if I may, help me understand, like the RDCK is a big landmass. What is comprising this group that people are not from the RDCK? Who's traveling beyond the RDCK for weekly ice time?
RDKB maybe?
Through the chair, my understanding is there are a number of youth from Nelson, a number of youth from Castlegar and Fruitvale, Trail, and other places.
Okay.
Potentially even in Costamere, Denver.
Okay. Is there any?
Thank you for letting me interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. So the result of that, and I think that the core principle here is that staff optimizing the ice is absolutely a requirement, given that we have a scarcity of ice. And that demand sometimes becomes more than we have supply for, but the fact that we haven't had the best practices in S226 as far as optimizing the ice, and certainly in Castlegar as an example, when you lose a sheet of ice, you do have to optimize the ice and have those conversations with the unit groups, and we say, this is what needs to happen for us to share the ice, or we're gonna essentially move people to 1 a.m., which nobody wanted to do, or 5 a.m., which nobody wanted to do. And so we're starting to get groups certainly in Castlegar and even a little bit in Creston, understanding that there are things that they can do to support the optimization of the ice, and that's where this is so new in Nelson that's in my opinion probably part of the concern we have today.
Okay. Okay.
I had a question, and forgive me because I had meant to get this to you yesterday and I wasn't able to. But I was curious, could we, just for context, could we just take a quick little recess and see the schedules? It's pretty hard for me to hold those moving blocks on a spreadsheet in my head to understand, like, everybody's perspective more easily, and it would be really helpful because this policy applies across rinks to see it, just those little colored spreadsheets, whatever they are, whatever chart you have that has the user groups from last year and this year for the 3 communities. Castlegar, because they had one shoot ice last year, Creston and Nelson. And I think that would give some context. And I was curious if we could just recess and do a little bit of printing and give ourselves an opportunity just to kind of, because everybody else has a good understanding of the shipping pieces, and for us, we're trying to imagine it.
So through the chair, we can probably pull up the examples for S226. That would be much more challenging to try to dig through emails and find the actual schedules for Creston and Castlegar. But for S226, to show you what 2025, 2026 look like compared to this year, I can try and see if I can find one in an email, because I know there was we deal with appeals in all locations, that I might be able to find a Castlegar one, but it might paint a bit of a picture. I just don't know if I'm looking at the one that's final.
Yeah,
So-
through the chair, it's an iterative process, and certainly taking the original draft to where we're at today, the schedule for S226 has probably changed several times, so we could show, I could show the current schedule and last year's schedule as drafted, not necessarily, because this is an average. This isn't what they use every week. This is what the groups ask, request, and that's what gets put into, for example, and this, this is also part of it, for some of the groups we have, on the weekends, we have minor hockey, 8 AM Saturday at both complexes, and Sunday, 8 AM and 9:30 at another complex. And so you would assume that during a tournament, that 8 AM doesn't make any sense, that you would assume that at a tournament, it would probably start at 6. So the schedule we could share is an average.
Sure.
Or a request. It's not necessarily exactly what each week looks like.
I get that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. And Cheryl's hands up.
Sure, Cheryl?
So thank you. I don't see this commission personally as being the scheduling body. So I don't necessarily need to see the schedule. I think what I'm struggling here with this appeal is whether the process and policy was followed. Because I did ask for a copy of an email, but there was an inadvertent email that had said the matrix was not completed. And I'm struggling with that. I'm wondering about the historical bookings and what weight that gets. And I'm wondering about the allocation priority classifications. And I guess what I'm really wondering here is if the process would have been followed with the matrix being completed at the very start, would we have the same outcome as we have now? And I think that might be the crux of this whole appeal. So to me, not knowing much about hockey or schedules or anything like that. So I'm wondering if staff could answer that.
Yeah, through the chair, that email in question, that inadvertent statement about the matrix not being followed, as I said earlier, the matrix is used when we're comparing two groups that are in conflict for the same ice slot, not an average week of 60 or 15 hours or 1 hour here. It's really about one particular piece, which will evaluate the matrix. The policy in general sets a priority for, as I said, the benefits to the community. Youth, not-for-profit, sport is third highest priority. And so they would get, I believe it's third, they would get higher priority than adult, not-for-profit. And so that's easy for staff to look at and say, it's youth, it's adults, then and that's how the old timers get bumped as soon as minor hockey makes a request. But when we dug into this and we were looking at, as I said, the old timers appeal, we recognized we weren't optimizing the ice, because the policy does give staff the ability to make decisions that optimize the ice to eliminate conflicts before getting to the matrix, before having that discussion about these groups are in conflict. Well, they don't need to be in conflict because we're not moving the youth to a more appropriate time of day, early morning at the Civic Arena.
I just want to say that this must be a very difficult balancing act for staff to manage with all of this. So I understand that. But like I say, we have a formal appeal in front of us. So when we get that as a commission, we really have to go back to the process and we have to look at that and say, like, you know, was this policy followed? Was this process really followed? And maybe should this matrix be used sooner in the process as opposed to waiting until now there's a conflict. So now we're going to pull this matrix out. So that's just some comments that I have.
Trish?
Just for, through the chair, some additional clarity for Director Graham. One of the big points of confusion for not just youth sport, but for all adult sport as well, is what the definition of historical means. Historical does not mean that I had 8 o'clock last year and I get 8 o'clock this year on the same day as you had in previous years. What it means is that you have the opportunity to have ice ahead of another group. It doesn't mean you have the same ice slot. So even in the old timers appeal, there was conversation with them to remind them that it does not mean that just because you had a particular ice slot in a previous year, that that is the one you will be given in this year. Historical simply means that you have been doing business with us for years, and therefore there's an opportunity to continue to have ice, but we don't know what that time might look like. And so people get confused as to, and I think historically, if you've got a group that's been using ice for 30 some odd years in a facility, the times have changed so much that some of those groups forget that the terminology is not the same as it was potentially 30 years ago when ice was being booked in facilities. So part of our and it's very carefully worded in the policy to indicate that. But depending on how you read it and how you want to read that policy, it can infer, you could infer that I get, if I've been booking for at this time for all these years in any given facility, that's the time I'm going to be given in the subsequent year. And that's very challenging. We understand the challenge that creates for groups, but we also understand the challenge that as groups, like whether it's minor hockey or other activities or new sport come in, there could be any number of other ice types of uses that could push allocation to its extreme. And so the part that, Craig has been talking around about that optimization is a really key component, because the same or similar appeal on Sundays in Castlegar said, no, we're not going to push all the adult groups till an 11:30 p.m. ending when minor hockey isn't wanting to start till 9:30 in the morning. It's like we can't operate facilities like that. It doesn't. It feels inequitable to everybody involved.
Tom?
Who got the Tuesday times we were discussing?
Who got the Tuesday times?
Yeah, the appeal is.
Yeah.
So just wondering,
Where did those land?
and then I have a follow-up to
Yeah.
that, but just curious.
Through the chair.
Tuesday or Monday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, thank you.
Yeah, so Tuesday is the Crusaders, 7:30 to 8:45. So that's the regional team that was under the umbrella of minor hockey in previous years.
Which,
So they got
some contention somewhere.
They got one ice slot on Tuesday and an ice slot on Thursday.
I am gonna ask for freedom of the floor from someone from minor hockey, because I wanna hear from the minor hockey about why there's some confusion. I keep seeing that.
Yeah, second.
Okay, and why don't you come up here and answer my question, which is, what is the confusion or the disagreement around Crusaders being under your umbrella for allocation last year?
So last
Sorry,
year
can you
alone,
just clarify who was given freedom of the floor, which,
So Kyle from Nelson Minor.
thank you.
so last year, they have never been under Nelson Minor Hockey. I want to make that blatantly clear. Never, ever. They've always been under West Coogee Minor Hockey. We've never rostered them through our HCR under Nelson Minor Hockey. Last year, they came to us and asked us if we could get them ice.
Mhm.
We reached out to Joe the past GM, I think is what his role was. And said, Joe, this is what's going on. We have all those emails if you need to see them. He told us that we could do this. We put a contract together with them.
Okay.
That laid out a whole bunch of things. It was signed off on by them. That's the direction we got from Joe.
Mhm.
And we said the same thing we would do this year is if we have ice available, because we lost a team last year, we only had one U13 house team, which we had planned to have more because there's these private teams that are stealing all these kids. So they've never ever been under us. We worked with them through Joe last year to help facilitate getting them some ice time. But this year they just went and didn't want to do that with us.
Okay, so for the purposes of ice allocation, you guys had already had that allocation. And so that you came up with a contract to.
We had it allocated to us last year, but we didn't need it because we didn't have that team. So we reached out because they had been reaching out to us. And then we said we can't because it's sublet. That's why we went through Joe. He told us how to do it. So we did it through Joe. It was all approved.
Because this was all post allocation last.
Post allocation.
Got it. Totally understand. Okay, that clarifies it for me. Is that confusing for anybody else?
I got it.
Okay, sweet. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Tom is still in the
You
queue.
had one more, yeah.
So were we seeing increased demand for ice in Nelson, ice time in Nelson?
Through the chair, I don't believe we are.
Okay, thank you.
Finite resource though.
Well,
It's like, so
I'll qualify that because, the Nelson leases several years ago, 2022 or 2023, they actually went from prime time. We had the Nelson lease in prime time. It was part of their agreement. They had practices during the evening. They made the deliberate decision to go daytime, which helped out us, in moving things around and certainly making more ice available for youth in the afternoons and prime time. The Nelson Leafs actually made a request this year to go back to prime time, and we said no. So there is more demand for prime time, but there's not more demand for ice.
okay,
Thanks. And my question is almost the exact same, but I was just thinking specifically to adult groups like men's groups as is allocation, because I take the point that it could be the case because of the prioritization of youth sports, which I think generally as a society we all agree on, that there could be no primetime ice for adults based on the number of, say, youth nonprofit user groups. Has there been a shift at all regionally and also in these two rinks with respect to adult user groups? Is there anything there that's like, oh, you should know this insight that's like magic to you that I don't have?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't have any data to support that there's other than the fact that the Pioneer Arena was decommissioned, which caused a bit of a supply issue in Calgary and Creston. We used to run an adult rec program, which they have taken on and created their own league. So that's been a successful adaptation, but there's no increased demand for ice from adults. I think in Nelson, there might be one user group in the last, and certainly from female adult hockey, there's been a request for more ice than we can supply at this point. So they've also been told, as most of the groups that have made a request for more than we have available, they've been told no. You can have what you had last year thereabouts. But I don't see any data to support a real increase in adult demand at this point.
Thank you. And just to riff off that, would you say that the adult demand in Nelson is the same as Cassidy Creston, more than like?
Through the chair in Nelson, we have 2 sheets of ice, so there's more hours put to it.
Okay,
Certainly in Nelson than Castlegar and Creston.
gotcha. Thanks. Yeah.
Just through the chair, maybe just another piece is that during allocation meetings, there's lots of conversation about the importance of, as say, adult groups being inclusive of more people than say a core 20 people that have always played together, out of the concern that there is only so much ice available. And to date, people kind of have in their minds that when they want to end their time on the ice and how they balance their day-to-day worlds, hasn't pushed ice usage really beyond. I think the latest we're seeing is in probably Castlegar. And off the top of my head, don't quote me on it, I wanna say there's groups ending between 11:30 and 11:45. I don't know that there's anyone going past midnight
No.
right now. Other than maybe in a special circumstance, but so the demand seems to cap out in where the willingness is as to where people are interested in taking ice. And so in that recognition, the conversation at allocation is to say, what can you do, or what can we do to also help support you as in a user group being inclusive of being open to other parties coming in, and that changes their allocation priority if there's a genuine intent to bring in public into their group. So there's some groups that do that, some that aren't interested in doing that. And so, but those are the conversations that also then when we get down to that component of allocation come into those conversations. But, you know, to Director Neal's point, it's a finite resource. And so we're trying to help groups understand how to provide the greatest benefit in spaces where we allow rentals of those spaces. There are other municipalities that actually take back all of that ice and simply say, we will manage how all ice is utilized, and we will run all of those services to maximize the benefit across. But we're trying to allow, we know we don't have the resources, there'd be a lot of other, you know, time and money needing to be invested in that it's helpful for those groups to participate in that exercise with us and be that partner in providing the community benefit for greater good.
Right, so that's taken into account on the matrix, just looking at.
Correct.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's really interesting because I remember there was a gentleman here at budget, maybe last year or the year before, who said, you know, I just love this rink. I play there 3 times a week. I was like, oh, I want, like, that's another reason for me to understand that block. I'm like, well, how are you playing 3 times a week? What does that look like for you? Are you in 3 leagues? How many of the players in each of the leagues are in many of the leagues? But neither here nor there. Sounds like you guys are in the nitty gritty, like Cheryl said, this nitty gritty. From my perspective, looking at the appeal and the email and the policy, the challenge that I'm having, and thank you for clarifying, is that 3:30 is equivalent to 10:30. I'm struggling with that, especially when we're talking about youth groups, if that's prime time, how that looks. I don't think that's a reasonable equivalency. And further, if that is prime time, the shift to optimizing to morning, it might be worthwhile to, in the future, when we look at this, understand which of those morning blocks could potentially be considered prime time. But at this time, they're not. And so I'm struggling with that equivalency just in the application of the policy from Cheryl's, from Commissioner Graham's overview there. So that's where I'm getting a little stuck here. And I was really glad that you clarified the other team, the bumping piece of it, because using that as part of the rationale muddies the water. So if we can separate that out, then I think we're in good shape.
Through the chair, the common prime is related to the fees that we charge, and based on the demand, and most people would want to use the ice between 3:30 and 10:30, or when we close as versus 6 a.m. And so I think that's where prime is set, is based on traditional demand. If we had groups coming saying we want 6 a.m. and that's in, you know, then it probably would be categorized as prime time.
One thing I haven't heard from staff, so I'll preface a question to give them an opportunity to be said, is the domino effect, right? Like this is coming up because there was an appeal, there was some shuffling, there was some opportunity to expand the hours and get more ice time. If a decision is made to support and lift this appeal, what are the knock-on effects going to be?
Yeah, through the chair right now, I mean, the old timers, if minor hockey were giving that hour back from 8:30 to 9:45, the old timers would be moved to 9:40 or 10 o'clock.
Who's there now? Who's at 9:30, 10 o'clock?
Nobody.
Okay.
So through the chair, though, the other conversation could be if ice time is taken from the Crusaders and given to minor hockey, I'm with you, sometimes it's hard to visualize. So there, if that's done, I think the part that we probably don't know, only because we dealt with an appeal with the old timers, I don't know that we know the consequence to the Crusaders for, losing ice. You know, there's all kinds of information we try to gather in, understanding the consequences. In this case, I don't know that we have enough detail to tell you or guide you on what that might be. And I'm looking at Craig and
Yeah, well,
particular.
through the chair, and that, you know, moving the Crusaders, which is a youth group which has had ice at the NBCC, moving them to 9 o'clock seems inappropriate for the age. And that would, you know, potentially have an impact on that group not being able to use the facility.
Remind me how old they are again?
They are, I think there's a U15 and there's a U18. Okay. There's 2 teams.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Is anyone,
Ran away from my brain. I'm wait for it.
Tom knows?
Just through the chair, I just wanted to go back to a comment, sorry, I just wrote it down, so I was trying to keep track of comments, but you talked about, wanting to try to see what those schedules look like. If you wanted to recess and have us try to pull up information that is visible, like, or visual,
I appreciate that, yeah.
we could take 5 minutes and try to have that ready, because I'm assuming, I'm
Okay.
looking at Anne in particular, to make sure we've got that.
Let's do that, but before we do that, this is an open meeting for a formal appeal. I don't wanna see a ton of sidebar conversations, because that compromises the integrity of the transparency of what we're doing here in the first place, so.
Sure.
Let's do a bio break and get some materials in front of commission, but this is not a point to try and have votes one way or another way, okay, guys?
Sure.
All royal guys? Okay, thanks, we're in recess for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so keep, what we could do, I mean, these are like, these schedules are like, I don't even know how
I'm good. We're all good. Okay, guys, we're back. We have a few printed versions of the schedule. I will just say we're not gonna share it up on the screen just because it includes information on the private booking pieces, and that's just not necessarily appropriate for broad distribution at this stage. So we've got printed copies for reference by commissioners. And I
see
think Kate had a question on the materials that were circulated. So you can start us off, Kate?
Yeah, my easy question, purple is, could you tell me what category that falls
Yeah,
into?
through the chair, that is a youth, not-for-profit community group.
Thank you, okay, gotcha.
That is one of the bigger youth not-for-profit groups.
I have one more question. As we're talking about optimization, and I see these schedules look like they start at 6:30, but I've been hearing 6 o'clock through the meeting. Could you just speak to that so that I have more clarity? And then I also had a curiosity around the 3:30, given that lots of elementary schools let out at 2:37. So I was just curious about if you have any, some schools let out at 2:37. If you had any insight as to other jurisdictions where they're starting their prime time earlier than that. So those are my two questions, is the 6 versus 6:30 and the 3:30 versus
Yeah,
whether.
I'll answer the first one, through the chair. The way we've done allocation is we've allowed groups to give us their requests. So they've requested a schedule that fits their model and their operational model. And in other jurisdictions, in other municipalities, mandating early, as early as possible to optimize the use is sometimes required. Where we've allowed groups to make requests, that's where they've made requests for 8 AM on a Saturday instead of 6 AM on a Saturday, or even starting tournaments at 9 AM on a Saturday, which has happened in the past in Nelson and Castlegar. 6:30 is their request. We have no other request for that ice time, so we have no conflict to resolve, so they can have that ice time. If they had requested 6, we would give them 6. In this situation, because we have not set, and that's what I was saying earlier about the policy and the procedures aren't prescriptive in saying that these groups for appropriate time of day, because that is a principle and one of the criteria, we would say you must start at 6 and fill all ice between 6 and 8, Monday to Friday, before you request prime time. That's something that we would work towards to optimize the ice. And the other question is.
Well, and through the chair, just to add a piece to that, so where this comes up is not in this particular community right now, but has come up in Castlegar, where that when you're down to one sheet of ice and you might have competing interests for minor hockey and potentially say figure skating in the morning, that's where that we would be forcing that optimization. So in some cases we've had, I think last year, I can speak to maybe more clearly, that we had minor hockey taking back-to-back ice slots because of the age of the kids. We didn't have to have an ice clean between the hour slots, or in some cases, they were utilizing the ice and literally getting kids like out the door into school. And there was a time that I can't remember what it was, but there was a time that between those parties, when they were looking to say, hey, we all need ice, this is how we're gonna maximize that time. We were operationally trying to figure out how to support that decision. And sorry, I don't remember the second part.
No, that's okay. You're forcing the optimization depending based on the request of the operational needs of the groups. I followed you. Yeah. I just want to say thanks very much for helping us understand your process, because like Commissioner Graham mentioned, it's not really our nitty gritty, but it does help us better understand, because it's pretty hard to just look at the policy if we're not understanding what's happening underneath the policy when you're trying to apply the policy. So where we normally wouldn't get this much in the weeds, I really appreciate understanding that better.
Great. Does that give anyone on commission a comfort level with any of the recommendations?
No,
Okay, great.
I mean, yeah, difficult.
Like, it's a tough situation. Obviously, our policy is drafted with the intent of providing clarity to our benefits analysis. It comes out of our other bylaws, which are our more formal pieces. We have language in there that gives staff discretion to apply it, even for that practicality, as we've been hearing. Now, does it rise to the level that we believe we need to override that decision and give the opportunity for youth to take back this spot, for lack of better language, and the shuffle that will ensue, or knowing that the policy needs additional work and is a work in progress. Do we believe that staff has done a good job of applying a lot of competing interests, and where the schedule has landed is where the schedule should stay for 2027?
I have a question, Chair.
Go, Cheryl.
Thank you. So I'm thinking back here when the Civic Arena had to shut down because of roof renovations and so forth. And I just remember staff being able to work with all these groups in this difficult situation to come up with something. So I guess my question is to staff, like, is there any value? Like, is the staff taking a hard line here and saying, no, this is the final allocation. We're not willing to go back to try to work with any groups, or is there any opportunity? Because this is a difficult situation. Is there any opportunity to go back and see, is there any possibility of working with some other groups to try to, make everybody happy? So that's just my question.
Through the chair, that is part of the process over time where we give the groups certainly the timeline and we nudge them into the request process and remind them of where things are at. And we do have the opportunity to have a meeting. I think in Nelson, in fact, the youth user groups had a separate allocation meeting prior to the larger group having an allocation. So they had two, which is an additional meeting to talk about that and to work through those challenges. I think to Director Graham's point about what happened with the Civic Arena, that Civic Arena conversation is still real. That Civic Arena could be closed intermittently, and so we're mindful of that and saying to minor hockey, yeah, you're being nudged into early morning, knowing that the Civic Arena could be closed because it gets 7 inches of snow, or in 15 centimeters, I believe that is. But yeah, we are, as through the policy and the procedures, that is our normal practice to have these conversations and try to work through the conflicts with the groups, and that has been successful today.
Supplemental?
Cheryl, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So supplemental. So I think my question really is, with this particular situation and this particular appeal, like, is there any opportunity for staff to go back to the schedule and try to work this out, like without this, without the commission having to force something one way or another? Like, the last thing we want to do as a commission is to favor one group over another. Like that, and I think staff really works well to not do that and to really try to make it work with every group. So is there any opportunity for that?
Through the chair, I would say we have done this, I could, at least in my knowledge, and I'm looking at Anne and Craig, probably 4 or 5 times before getting to this point.
Okay.
So I think from staff's perspective that we have done what we believe is best based on all of the information that we have. And so I'm not sure what changes we would be able to come up with that we haven't already tried to work into this schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Like, it's fair to say, because the old timers was already an appeal that went through a process.
Mhm.
Correct. Right, so we'd be rolling back that appeal.
Okay.
Okay, does that give you a comfort level to move one of the options before you, Cheryl? Oh, sorry, Kate's got a question.
That's okay.
You sit on that, percolate on it.
Me? Oh,
No,
okay.
Cheryl,
So,
do some bravery. What's your question, Kate?
you said some of the alternates, so I got muddled because I saw the proposed solution and then it took me time to figure out what were the alternates.
Yeah, the option summary, section 7.
Oh, I was in 4 and 5.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's perfect.
Um. Yeah, from my perspective, there's, the policy needs work, I agree, because we've got residents written under eligibility, but it's not written within the scoring matrix, so that's, I guess that's part of the eligibility part. The historical booking is clearly confusing to folks. And the email indicates that the matrix was not used. And optimization is not currently contained within the policy. I'm not feeling super confident that the policy was applied in the best way, especially given the, I don't think it's reasonable to compare 330. Like, I don't think that's a reasonable application of prime time as the policy is written. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Cheryl? You're muted, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I would echo that I'm not feeling 100. I wish I was, but I'm not feeling 100% that the policy was followed. I also echo that the policy needs work. So, and I wish there was an opportunity for staff to take another shot at this to try to work it out. And that's kind of where I'm landing.
Okay. I need a motion. Tom, was that a hand?
No, it was, not a hand.
Okay. I am going to move option 3, direct staff to change the allocation decision. Do I have a seconder?
Could I just go up the, report first?
Yep. Cheryl, is that a hand? Okay.
Is that a second?
It was not.
Sorry, I will second it for discussion.
Okay, seconded for discussion.
And I have a question.
Go ahead. A question from Cheryl on option 3, direct staff to change the allocation decision.
And I would also have a friendly amendment that would also include and further that the board directs staff to review the allocation policy that is part of option 1. So that would be a friendly amendment.
I'll consider that friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, that definitely needs to happen, for sure.
And then the question would be, like, we don't know to change it to what? That is, if we direct staff to change the allocation decision, like, what are we changing it to? So that's my question.
So through the chair, for clarity for staff, the way we would interpret that conversation would be you would release the Crusaders ice on Tuesday. Correct, and I'm looking at everybody, make sure I follow. Release the Crusaders ice on Tuesday and move the old timers to I think it would be like a 9:45, 9:30 or 9:45 start time on Monday. So that would be the Monday impact, and Tuesday would be the Crusaders impact, which currently they have 7:30 to 8:45. So that's really hard to read on me. 7:30 to 8:45 on Tuesday. So if there's a difference to that direction, we would need that clarity.
Okay, is that understood?
No, say it again, please.
So on Tuesday, to change the decision would mean releasing the Crusaders from the spot on Tuesday, 7:30 to 8:45, so that it could be reallocated to minor hockey, and pushing the old timers from 9 to 9:30.
Because the Crusaders would also move.
Yeah, and through the chair, then that would move the gentleman on Tuesday night as well to a 10:30 time. if Crusaders bumped. Right, so this is the ripple effect is that if we move Crusaders, they then have the allocation priority to move the gentlemen that are at 9 o'clock on Tuesday.
Yeah, it moves the
So
whole,
they would,
It moves
everything would
moves
move
everything
back.
later that day, that's correct.
And I can see some confusion, so that assumes that they would still want
Mhm.
that time slot. So for example, what Craig is saying is that if minor hockey, so just Tuesday, blue section, if 7:30 to 8:45 became minor hockey, the Crusaders would then be offered 9 or 9 to 10, say 10,
10:15.
if they wanted an hour and 15 minutes.
Correct.
And then the gentleman would be bumped again, so that assumes that any of those particular, because these groups are asking for ice. And so we assume, like, the Crusaders, for example, have asked for 3 ice slots, they've only been given 2. So we're going to assume that they still want ice somewhere in this schedule. So this is where the bumping all starts to shift and change across the board. If somebody said, no, we don't want it, then that changes things again.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
See a question?
Do you want to speak to your motion?
Sure, I'll speak to the motion. All things being fair and knowing that we need to do some policy work, I do think that in the application of the values, that there's been enough of a case made by the delegation that that there's a priority there for the youth, for that group. And that I think the other groups can accommodate given their age brackets. Like 15's kind of young for being out at 9 o'clock, but not the worst thing I've ever seen in the world. So I think there is a workable, it's not ideal. There's certainly at the other end of the discussion, and I'm also amenable to it, is staff does retain within the policy the large breadth of discretion to apply and to use the facility and to arrive at these decisions. But I also think it's prudent that we follow through with our policy as best as we can. And this is certainly one of the things that will inform many discussions in the future on how the policy should be changed. And that's got to include the use groups in the future. Because there will be, I think, anticipating the discussion here, there will be changes that will close this kind of thing. But yeah, I look at that Tuesday and I think it may be workable enough and to figure out how to make that time available. So I given that nobody else wants to move the discussion, I think we have to start there.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
I didn't quite understand, Craig, what, I thought I had the implication that something was affecting the old timers on Monday, to which the original appeal was, their appeal was successful to change their time on Monday.
Yeah, through the chair of the process, they're currently the ice slot is showing 8:30. What they had previous was, I think it was 9:30. And so they had appealed that. And so what we did to make room for that was we moved minor hockey to early morning at the Civic Arena.
So
now minor hockey requesting as part of their appeal, that time slot would bump the old timers back
to 9:45
or 10 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Which other follow-up? I noticed some other adult, seems men's times start 9:30-ish, 9:45,
Correct.
9:30, 9:45. I have no further questions.
Okay. So we have a motion seconded on the table to change the allocation. Is there anything else before we do a vote on that? And then if this fails, someone else will have to move a different resolution. So Calling the question, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, then direction is back to staff to relook at this decision. Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks to the delegation for coming, and let's move on to our community. Do we need a break?
I need a break.
Okay, we're gonna have a proper break for, take us till 10:30, and then we'll move on to our next business item. back here.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And we'll right back to Craig's show today.
Craig loved it.
Okay, well, we're just
How
gonna,
we start this agenda.
we're reconvening, the meeting here after our bit of a bio break. We've got one other item here, 7.2, which is the community complex liquor license. Craig, do you wanna give us an overview?
Through the chair, I do. So through the review of the long-term facility use agreement with the Nelson Leafs, review of the language related to the third-party operation of the liquor license, and a hard look at the requirements for the liquor license. Staff have determined that we were in questionable compliance with our application and our operation of that liquor license going back at least to 2014, when the commission directed staff to apply for the license and assign it to the Nelson Leafs. Language in the agreements seemed legitimate and legal. However, the application of the third-party operator, according to a principle in the BC LCRB regulations, is that valid interest is required for the assignment of third-party operators. And that the definition of valid interest is only can be assigned to a tenant or in a lease situation where there's a lease. And we do not have a lease with the Nelson Leafs. We have a facility use agreement that gives them regular rental of the ice facility and the bleachers. And so that is not in compliance. And so what we the go forward is that staff have contacted the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch to determine the most appropriate mechanism. And so we have there's a temporary suspension. Actually replied back to me and said delicensing is the approach. It's more of a long-term scenario, so we'll go through that. And delicensing means we will no longer have a license, but then it will make it so that the Nelson Leafs are able to apply for a special event permit for every event that they want to sell alcohol at. And that is keeping with the practice that other groups, including the Castlegar Rebels and other renters in Castlegar and Creston, for banquets and other events in our banquet halls, apply for special event permits. So that is it's a formal process. It's never, barely ever refused. And so there should be no obstacle for the Nelson Leafs to apply for those. It's just an administrative, in addition to their administrative processes, plus it's approximately $125 for each special event permit. So if they play 26 home games, that's the impact. So that's the report for the commission. This will have based on our conversation with negotiating the facility use agreement with the Nelson Leafs, which we did tell them about a couple of weeks ago after the commission meeting when we were given direction to negotiate. We said this was potentially happening, and we have confirmed with them through an email on Friday that this is what's happening.
How much were they paying before? Because weren't they recouping our cost for the facility-wide license?
Yeah, through the chair, the initial application for the Nelson Leafs back in 2014, I believe, was $2,200, and we paid us back over time for that. And then every year, it's according, I believe it's according to a scale based on sales, and the Nelson Leafs were in the range of $500 to $600 a year paying us for this. In Creston, for example, the Creston Thunder, the invoice that went to them this year was $325.
Okay,
So in Nelson is about $500 or $600 a year.
but now they're looking at about 3,500.
Correct.
Sorry, I jumped the queue, my queue. Any other questions about this item? Okay, it's for information. This is one of our statutory requirements under the liquor board. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you. It is required. The liquor licensing branch says you've been finding a nice way to do this. That is probably not the appropriate way to do this, so this needs to happen. I was curious, does that mean that other user groups effectively could get a special events permit where they would have otherwise had to go through the RDCK in the past?
Through the chair, this absolutely makes it so that other groups can get a special event permit. The license was for a section of the bleachers, about 85% of the bleachers with a non-licensed area with a red line drawn around it. In Crescent, for example, it is the entire bleacher area where the license is held. Meaning that the dry floor was always available for a special event permit, but now this makes it so that other groups can apply for special event permits for the bleacher area at the NTCC.
Okay. And picking this off from a previous conversation, the expectation bureaucratically, administratively for the Leafs is they're gonna have to apply for this individually as they go along through the season. This is not something they can just give the schedule and tell the liquor board, these are the dates.
Yeah, through the chair, that's how they do it in Castlegar, and it's worked for them. And I believe that is the process where they apply each time. And again, it is a formal process, and I haven't seen in my time in the RDCK where anyone has come to a rental and said, I wasn't able to get my special event permit. They always show up with a special event permit.
Okay, and then how do we validate that those are getting gone?
Yeah, through the chair, what we do is we request prior to the rental, proof of the SEP, and then staff will say, okay, carry on. And then the other thing to consider, and yes, it's legislated, is that the liability now that through the special event permit is that if we were a third party, the Nelson Leafs were a third party operator, the RDCK would still then be responsible for supervising it. This special event permit process makes it so that all liability is on the renter.
Okay, great. Okay,
Thanks. Do you predict that there would be new different expenses that will also be incurred besides this offset additional $1,000, $1,200, depending how it works out? Because I think you said 2,200 and then
Oh, no,
125.
no, through the chair, 2,200 was the original license fee.
Yeah.
So now the special event permit would be 125 times about 26 events.
Which is $3,250, so about $1,000.
No, 2,200 was a one-time fee back in 2014.
One time.
They pay about 500 to 600 a year.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's about a $3,000 net difference.
Okay, thank you. Do you expect that there would be other expenses that will come along with the liquor license? Is there gonna be new additional like security required or
Through
other
the,
things?
through the chair, those are already, security is already as part of the original agreement with them, that as far as the licensing, we did have to, the RDCK did have to have security through the Nelson Leafs, so should be nothing new unless the BC LCRB changes regulations.
so the running event still holds the same requirement.
No additional requirements predicted at this time.
Correct.
Gotcha. So about a $3,000 hit.
Okay. Any further questions?
I will receive for information, or we don't say anything.
Yeah, let's receive your information.
Receive for information.
Oh, we do vote on those.
Okay.
Okay, great. That takes us to correspondence. We have, thanks Craig for that work. We have a correspondence here about having our schedule be cognizant of our wildfire days and adjusting accordingly. I was certainly there on a Sunday with the wildfire day. It was packed. Is there anything, I'd heard from staff already, I think at the board week last time, that this may already be in the works, there may already be recognition about this, or is there anything about this correspondence that needs to be formalized into direction?
Well, just through the chair, I can add just a couple pieces of information. So we have a similar request in the Castlegar Commission as well.
Oh.
And so our programming team is already looking at what that might look like in a future year. I did spend some time with Dan Seguin, our emergency management staff lead, and they are also interested in seeing what they might be able to do to work with us on dealing with smoke problems, recognizing that there's obviously now some pretty clear stats that this is probably going to be our norm going forward and what that might look like. So staff are looking at a variety of things. Certainly will involve Dan and his team, but also some programming which comes with its own challenges of logistics of how do you decide when and how to activate something indoors? What are the staffing requirements? Can we actually turn something like on and off depending on air quality indexes easily? There's a host of challenges there. But we too feel that we field a lot of questions about different things. Even our maintenance shutdowns tend to happen in August. And is this now something we need to start looking at differently? and organizing our time, within facilities differently in order to allow people to be indoors differently at a time that they're more traditionally outside. So there's a variety of factors that we're looking at. So just to speak to the correspondence, it's on our radar.
Thanks.
Greg, can I add? Not really a rabbit hole, but, through the chair, the other aspect of the air quality index is from a staff perspective and a staff health and safety perspective. And so we do have a very, aligned with regulations where staff can work outside and when they can't work outside. And so we set AQI of 201 as the limit for when all of our services come inside because staff can't be outside. And the scale starts at 150 is unhealthy. Staff can work when it's unhealthy. We provide masks, etc. But at 201, we bring them inside. The one thing that we don't know is what the actual air quality of the indoor facilities is because we don't have sensors. We can assume it's indoor and we have proper filtration, but when a door gets open, we don't know how much of that poor air comes into the facility. And so we are also looking at putting internal staff facing air quality indexes so that because we don't know if we move everybody inside, if we're actually being safe inside. We assume we are, but that's another thing that we're looking at as a part of this is just because everyone's inside, or are we putting them in a safe place?
Okay.
So through the chair, I know Christy and Tia's programming team are looking at this, and so we can bring back more information to commission as we have a chance to gather more.
Thank you.
Like currently, when we close down Gyro for the same purpose, that staff allocation is coming in, like that person still knows they're booked for the day and they have a shift. It just may be inside as opposed to outside.
Correct.
But we're also seeing the level of use of the facility that requires more staffing beyond even just that. It's not a one-to-one. Okay. Great. I appreciate that. Other questions? On that note, okay, then we'll see something in the future. Doesn't need a formal motion. It's already in motion.
Yeah,
then-
thanks for that. Thanks for being responsive to the realities around us.
It was packed. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was not something we wouldn't have had to think about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Seems like, right?
That takes us to our public time. So do we have any members of the public that would like to? We've got Bill. But we'll start with Bill. And if anyone online wants to pipe up, I'll put you on the list.
It's just a follow-up to the discussion you were just having about the smoke environment that we're experiencing on a more frequent level. Does the summer program that is usually at Lakeside Park, its alternative site is the NDCC? Okay.
Yeah, through the chair it is, yes.
Yeah, okay. As part of that, and I've been thinking about this for a number of years about encouraging at the city level, the retention of the civic arena as well, in its discussion as to what its future looks like, to consider that being a summer retreat kind of for outdoor sports, given the smoke climate that we're experiencing. I don't know if discussion has ever been around the city council table on that or the regional district. But I think that that's becoming more imperative that we protect those indoor facilities for possible influx of outdoor sports that want to come indoors. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking of is a request that has to this commission and to the city council as well about not tennis, but soccer indoor facility. And I can remember one of the questions that then was that the quality, what director or manager Sammy was saying about the air quality and the response by the group that was presenting that proposal was that sometimes that the air quality is actually inside the bubble is better than what we normally experience outside the bubble with the new technology that's available for ventilation and whatnot. So I just want to make that add to that discussion. The other one was just as there's been an item that's been on, and it's the Recreational Campus Capital Funding Service process and impact it's been on a number of agendas. I noticed it wasn't on today's, but that's something that I've read the report. I think manager is presenting that at some point. Do you have an idea when that is going to be actually tabled and discussed? I don't want to miss
Yeah,
that being.
100%. I don't know what staff is thinking currently, because we're getting really close to the election.
Well, that's
so-
that's the reason why I'm bringing it up now.
The intent when that was originally brought forward was to try to tee us off into having a proper question before the voters for this cycle, which is not a timeline in the end we could meet. And then it was moved around simply because of attendance. It was felt that it was a big enough and important enough topic that a director or two not being present was sufficient to move it along so we could get everybody at the table when we had the discussion. I personally, this is my own personal opinion as chair, that it's really, it's one of those long-term pieces that we need to have a good conversation about so that we can go to the voters and ascertain a proper capital investment going forward. And so that if I'm still around here after October, that's kind of the thing I'd be pushing for. I think that's.
I can appreciate that, and I remember one of the meetings, both the representative from the Sports Council and I congratulate. I think it was the last one that Joel was at as the manager, and we were even talking about going to referendum, potentially having a referendum with this October one. And so then I thought this was going to be kind of a step now, presently, to lead the next group, whether the faces are the same, and it wouldn't get lost in the process. So that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, definitely not lost. Like, and that's part of why we do our minutes the way they are, so that they keep track, because if you notice the blue section of the minutes, the whole purpose of that is so that things do no longer get lost.
Yeah.
They will sit there until we deal with them, and we will deal with that one for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Unless I'm not here, other people have ideas. I can't control the law. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh,
I'll just
Andrew,
do a
yeah,
couple
go.
things quickly. The first thing about the decision about the minor hockey, again, very happy for them and stuff like that, and appreciate the willingness of the people at the table to make difficult decisions. I guess my comment, though, that would be that sometimes it makes me uncomfortable when decisions are changed. Decisions are made on an existing policy, and they might get changed because people aren't sure about the policy and they feel that the policy needs to be reviewed. And sometimes I get uncomfortable decisions that are made about what the policy might look like in the future. And I've always tried to stay with, if the decision is made by the procedure and the protocol of the existing policy, that may have the most merit. So again, I appreciate the willingness to look at it, but it sets up a precedent suddenly where someone says, gee, kind of don't like that policy. And rather have the policy go through its regular cycle and process for review and revision, they can try to use a criticism of policy to overturn an existing decision. So I'm just commenting on that based on my experience and based on this conversation that I had, and certainly respecting the great amount of work that the staff obviously do on the scheduling. So it's a matter of process and procedure about making leaving decisions in place that are based on existing policy. The last thing I do is I have had a concern come to me through the Sports Council, and it was about the awarding of the concession contract to an outside company. I don't know anything about the process, and I'm certain that it's a very thorough process as well. I'm just sharing with you that I've had a few members of the public raise concerns about the loss of local benefit and the different sort of, kind of extended benefits beyond just sort of the Nelson Maple Leafs earning revenue, but, local purchasing, local, people hired and other things. So I'm just passing on that concern that's come through me to this body. But again, I do recognize that you have a procedure and protocol. I'm assuming that the vetting of the proposals was thorough. Okay, that's all I got.
And just on that decision, it has a 1 year and then an option for 1 year. So we are fully intending, and we've talked about this, to see it in a year and have it be looked at again. And hopefully there might be a local group that wants to do. We'll see what level of service is provided over the next year and how feasible that is. And if that shows a pathway, as I've said elsewhere, that there's an ability to run full year service out of that, that might be a path that is trodden that someone else can then follow.
Well, and I would say that one of the other things I did hear was that there were concerns that the concession wasn't open enough.
Yeah.
And that there were certain groups who didn't get access to it.
Yeah.
Right, and they pointed out to other facilities that they did.
Yeah, I think we're trying to make sure that that thing is open, that the concession is open for the broadest amount of people, the longest amount of time.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to get to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks, appreciate that. Have a motion to adjourn? Kate, Tom, all those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Tara.